Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Arknights Endfield reaction. Today we have PHEONIX on the rise as requested by the Gamer127 and my executive producers, and I was given no other details about this one, why it exists or anything. I just know that it's from Endfield, so I suppose I'm going to listen to this and find out what it's all about. Without further ado, let's go! It's actually one of the shorter songs I've gotten from Endfield. So I really don't know where it's gonna go thematically.
In the dark of night, I wander alone through the echoes of dreams, searching for my own.
Ooh.
In the midnight hour,
that low register of this vocalist. Ooh.
breaking from the past, from ashes came fire.
I love how her voice resonates down there just barely. It's like, ooh.
Dark before the dawn, a new day's begun.
There's also this like slight distortion in her voice. I can't tell if that's an effect or just something she's doing.
Favors the bold, breaking chains,
Ooh.
the ones control.
Oh, nice. Nice little bass drop there.
Nothing to prove, nothing to lose.
Okay. That was a shorter chorus bit. Great scale.
A phoenix on the rise, ready to ignite.
Whew. So that's why it was shorter. They were building up still.
A phoenix on the rise, ashes turn alive.
Gotta love the arpeggiations.
In this new world, a phoenix on the
It's like usually that would be for a synth, but they're like, nah. Let's make that the strings. Whew. Huge swell there at the end too. That's a very cinematic track. Like, I know we've gotten a few of those out of Endfield already, but I love how this one almost had like the Metal Gear Solid sort of feel to it, where it's just like, Jesus, you're really going for it, aren't you? All right, so like I said, this one is just cinematic and really badass in that respect. It just has a lot of build up that goes kind of everywhere, but also teeters on the edge of leaving everything nowhere. I don't know how I'm supposed to make sense of that. That was the best way that my brain decided to phrase it, but I'll explain myself, of course. So this song's kind of interesting because it likes to use neighboring minors. So we have like the E and the E minor. I think this song is in E minor, but it likes to use the regular E, and it also does the same thing for the A minor and the A. Like, for example, the beginning of this song has a slightly different chord progression than the second half of the song, where the first half starts out kind of doing this E minor, D, C, A, and you can hear how that like settles in with the A, but a little bit later into the song it goes in with the E minor, D, C, A minor, and that settles a little bit harder than this does. It like ends the sentence a little bit more confidently, strangely. Usually that would be the major chord doing that, but I feel like that adds a little bit of tension to the lift. And I feel like that same thing happens with the E at different parts too, because the beginning of this song kind of bounces between the E and I think the A minor, and like that's just setting the tone of the song before we switch over to that main progression, and then they revisit it for the last part of the song. And a lot of what happens with that is just sharing the dynamics of where the song is going. How much tension do you want to have on a song before you release it? And that's where those minor major relationships come into play, and why Trey separating out some chords can be very useful depending on what you're trying to shape there. So like if I were to replace the entire same chord progression but with the E, you can still feel that it's ending here, but the loop back up brightens everything a lot higher than the minor does. So if you go from the minor here to the minor here and loop back around starting there, it feels immediately like you're still in that tension compared to this, which obviously feels a lot brighter, happier, and a little bit more positive. And that is a dynamic that this song kind of ventures around with, and it plays around with that because a lot of the song, being cinematic by nature, you're gonna have that tension there, but there needs to be moments where you release that tension. And that's why these relationships are so useful, because that's how you do it. You change out one or more of these for whatever they need to be for that tonality that you're trying to go for, that tension level you're trying to keep steady or completely change up, and that's why it's useful. So now you have this perfect formula for an easy to make sort of cinematic track. Just, you know, replace something once in a while to add or build tension, and then you have the rest of the progression to follow up. There are a few other chords in here that get used, but I don't think they're nearly worth mentioning aside from maybe like the G, which again just kind of acts as this like settling factor in this song. It's like taking the A and then, you know, just going further down. Stuff like that happens in the song, but that's really the only other notable chord in my opinion. The rest of this track mostly just focuses on those exact chords I already played for you. But of course we have that arpeggiating I was mentioning, and I love how they do this, because this is weird, but like in a really good way. And I'll be the first to admit I'm not 100% on getting these notes down. I'm fairly certain I got them at least 98% of the way there, but it can be hard to hear this sort of stuff underneath the mix of everything else. But I'm pretty sure what's happening is just following the under chords, you know, like following the bass chords of that section. So when you start this, of course, starting on the E minor, it goes, and that might feel weird because that's not an E minor, you know, like you're taking this note, moving it down, and you're adding this, which doesn't even belong in there, you know? So it's like, that feels weird. Why would you do that? This is just how chromatics work. And when you're about to move into a D, you have these two notes here. So it kind of works with the progression here, and you get this, again, build, and it's again, mostly stealing what the first one was, just shifting down the first finger. And that's such an interesting way to do that, because it feels so natural to do that, but it feels so wrong since you're just, you know, building off the same thing. It feels like it's illegal in that way, and then the C changes it up a little bit and moves the top finger down finally. But we're still using this one, and of course this here, so. And what gets really strange to me is when they move up to the A, they go all the way up to, of course, the A, but this is an A, and instead of doing that, they mostly borrow from the G. And this note up here, that is making the entire thing feel like it's lifting and staying up on that tension. That's the tension I was alluding to earlier. This sort of, it doesn't settle anywhere. It just allows you to move immediately back down to. This is a very tenuous relationship, but they resolve into each other pretty nicely in that sort of a progression. And these chromatics are why people love and hate music, depending on who you are, depending on what you're going for. They can be a love or hate relationship, because that can be such a pain in the ass. Just me trying to figure out what exact notes were being played, and I'm still not 100% confident on the notes that I played there, albeit I listened to it again and again and again. It's so difficult to tell with everything else going on in the song what exact chromatic background is happening, why these arpeggiations are doing what they're doing, and what they're shaping into, and what they're sharing DNA with from the prior or the chords they're about to go to, and you have to figure that out. So when I heard this top one, I'm like, there's no way that it could be doing that. I thought for a second it might be going like up there and like kind of borrowing from this like F sharp minor potential, and I was like, no, maybe not though. And then like after a few more listens, I'm like, I think that's it. I even thought for a second it was going like, but I was like, that's completely wrong, because that's just a straight chromatic and it doesn't have any harmonious relationship with the rest of it. It didn't feel right at all. You could probably tell if you got a good ear that that just doesn't feel right. So it took me a while to get that one down. But it's these sorts of builds that support so heavily everything else happening in the song. The rest of the song is this big bombastic energy. I love the vocalist, the power is there. I love the strings being what would be a synth, like I mentioned. If you were to turn this into a full electronic song, those would be a synth. And I love that they decided not to go in that direction and decided to take this cinematic, classical sort of approach to it, because it feels so much more powerful in that moment. It adds a little bit more body, a little bit more organic sensation to the track, which is something that is done a lot in Endfield's music, and is something that I like that they've made a consistent feature of this soundtrack instead of just going, hey, let's throw whatever the fuck around. They tend to lean into a lot more of the orchestration with Endfield compared to the original Arknights, which is totally chill, and it kind of fits the scale of the game a little bit better, because the original Arknights is more close-knit in my opinion, and you don't have the open world aspect. So this being something that's grander and built on a lot more shit in general, it makes sense to follow these sorts of heavy constructive moments in the soundtrack, and this composition of having these arpeggiations building everything, constantly feeling like they're going somewhere, but ending up on notes like this that add the tension, don't release it, but they loop very well back to the beginning, just like I'm sure a lot of people feel the story is. So this works really well for me, and I feel like it's a very good composition in general, but I think that's about all I've got to say on it, so thank you all so very much for watching. If you have another song you want me to get to from Endfield, by all means, drop in the comments below, and I will do my best as always to get to those. Or if you want to guarantee something, much like Gamer127 did for this one, you can go to my Patreon, and if the tier is open, you can guarantee something out of me. It doesn't matter what it's from, who it's by, if it's good or bad, none of that matters. That's why it's a guarantee. But if you don't want to do any of that, maybe just want to follow me and support me for more stuff coming in the future, you know how to do all that, and I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye!